It's one of the most legendary circuits that Formula One goes to every single year. It's the Suzuka International Racing Course from Suzuka, Japan. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Frank Marchese, and thank you very much for making us a part of your day here on ESPN. And to join me today is going to be a new voice to ESPN, who's going to be taking over lead commentary duties today. Jack Sperry, welcome to ESPN.
Well, thank you very much. I'll correct you first and foremost, and it's Jake. But
Jake, wow. Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry.
It's absolutely fine. We're off on the right foot here, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh.
Suzuka, Mie Prefecture. What a place it is today to see some amazing racing. We're just in the last couple of minutes here of practice, getting ourselves ready and sorted before qualifying action. A championship which is just 2 points separating in a championship run so far, which has seen 3 different race winners in the first 3 races. Is this going to be a case of seeing maybe a same winner from the opening lot, or are we going to see a different prospect come into play? This is 5.81 kilometers of the greatest racing that you can find out there. And, well, every corner here tells a story, Frank, and it's one of those circuits which you can never truly replicate no matter where you put it.
It certainly does. And like Javier Torres, he just went through the Casio Triangle. Who could forget Senna, Prost in a great finish? I believe it was 1989 was that year, or turn one here where I believe it was Senna and Prost again had it going off for a championship. So this is, as you said, just a legendary course that every corner has a major moment in at least Formula One history.
Absolutely. We are in morning conditions today here at Suzuka. It's just coming up towards 8:45 in the morning in sim time. Track temperature up at 21 degrees. It's a cool one at the moment. The wind's blustering in from the northeast at around 10 kilometers an hour right now. But the times here in practice, well, they tell a very, very close story. The top 3 split by just 1/10 or even less than that. 0.5 of a second between Dave Guild, Lubomir Moric, and the reigning champion, Paul Ilbrink. It tells you all you need to know right now, Frank, that this is going to be a hard-fought qualifying and race.
Yeah, this is one of those tracks where it gets so much attention from the open wheel fans. It's, again, with all the history at this track, just like Barcelona being the F1 test track, it gets a lot of work, a lot of attention. This is another one of those tracks where the history just lends itself to getting so much attention as qualifying is set to begin.
Exactly. They've got 15 minutes. It's an open qualifying session. That means that every driver will be out there racing against each other in real time. And what else will that mean as they go out there and they try and race around this place? It means that getting yourself out on track and in the right pocket of air is going to be a key factor. The first driver out on track is Lubomir Moric in the Positive Sim Racing outfit. They have had a long legacy, Frank, of being open wheel successes. They've had themselves some great success when it's come to Skip Barber Racing, and through the program that they have through there, they've gone all the way up to World Championship level back in the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series days, and especially with what's coming on the horizon, 2021 is looking like the Dallara might be coming into view very soon with a World Championship effort there. It might be the case where 2021 comes up on the horizon, and that could be a positive sim racing year.
It certainly can be, and it's already been a positive sim racing year. Lubomir Moric winning the preseason race at Imola, winning the opening Grand Prix at Monza, and I believe, if I remember right, finishing second at Watkins Glen earlier this year. Last week was really the first time we haven't seen Moric in a contention to win the race or to win the podium, so looking to get back on form here at Suzuka.
Exactly, and there are a lot of teams and a lot of drivers who want to prove their point. Paul Ilbrink in the Radicals Online with Track Racer team, certainly looking to try and be one of them in the number 16, has certainly got himself a legacy in sim racing, has been here, there, and everywhere, and has been a main staple of the open wheel scene here in iRacing for goodness knows how long, at least 10 years at this point. Ilbrink is probably the veteran, the most experienced driver in this field, and knows exactly what he needs to do today.
Yes, certainly, and he won that championship by a good 40 points last year here with the eFormula Series. Last week was not nearly as not as quick as his teammate Manuel Domingo was. Still had a great run, had that win at Watkins Glen where he showed that form from last year. And this appears to be another track where he seems to be on pace as you see him coming out of the final corner trying to warm up his tires for his first lap.
Absolutely, there you can see he was struggling a little bit there as he over-rotated and was a little bit throttle happy as he now goes into the opening 2 corners here on this circuit. A very tough braking zone. You're always trying to stick as close to that inside curb as possible. Now comes the fabled S's section. This is what makes setup around this place a nightmare, because this is where you need all of that aero dependency in a style of vehicle like this. Now through the big left-hand bend up the hill, this is where you need to be having confidence in all of that setup choice. And then you've got the 2 Degner corners here. Degner 1 is a fast right-hander off camber, but then you get this second corner where you hit down the brakes and you go under the bridge for the very first time. And now you set yourself up for what is colloquially known as Kobayashi Corner, because he's so good under the brakes here. This is the Dunlop hairpin, and this is where the second half of the lap comes into play. Fast and flowing and around.
Yep, caught the back end of that curb. We were riding on board with him. He caught the outside of that curbing. Really sent him for a loop. Good job on him just to save that car.
Exactly, and this is where drivers are struggling here in the opening laps when it comes to qualifying. This is cold track conditions, so that's going to take a little bit longer to get these new tire model version 7 tires up to temperature. 142.4 from Lubomir Moric, though, in terms of qualifying. Get this, that's already half a second quicker than his practice time.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot. These guys sandbagging a little bit during the practice session and really going for it in the qualifying session. So that leaves me to believe, with how close a guy like Ilbrink was to the top, he was even sandbagging and still about the quickest car. So this is going to be a fun qualifying to watch as it plays out.
Absolutely. Matt Quinn has gone second on a 43.2, and Marcellus Bruning with a 44.245 has just dropped down into 4th position because Javier Torres has put a 43.9 in on the board. That's good enough to move into 3rd position. Leonardo Fabian into 5th place now on a 45 flat, not necessarily the most representative. Danny Herkstra, though, getting a good time in on the board, moves up into 3rd position right now in the Tulip racing car and has done pretty well there with that time. Still 1.2 seconds off the pace, but still there is a lot of time to get things going, as that's Mark Ponick there jumping up into 2nd position.
Yep, Ponick just setting that lap in, and we saw while you were talking there, that was Miguel Dominguez. Miguel Domingo, there it is. That spun off both at 130R and going through the back end of the S's there. So Domingo having a little bit of a rough time. But yeah, Hoekstra putting in a very good lap. Ponick as well. It's just a question now of will those times hold.
Well, the key here for Manuel Domingo is that he is on an outlap here, hasn't set anything representative right now, and is just gearing up for that flying lap attempt. So for the number 9 in the Radicals Online colours, he'll be definitely hoping that he gets a good result here for his team boss, Rob Cuss. So we'll see how this one plays out, as on the power he will look to try and attack. Matt Quinn just jumps up behind into 2nd position there on a 43 flat, but Moric has gone even quicker still, 42.1 that time by. He's 9/10 clear of anybody else right now in this qualifying session. And yes, we've got time on the board. We've got ourselves about 10 minutes and under now left to go, and a couple of names at the 14 so far haven't really set much. Torres now jumping up into 4th position on a 43.1. It's getting a little bit crowded around 143.1.
It certainly is, and that's going to be another thing you want to watch out for, is guys like Domingo, like Ilbrink, have not set times yet, as Keeman comes in with a 142.388. There's Alexander Davidson as well, coming in with a 142.336. So we're starting to see these guys, the quick guys, start to set in times right now. So Moric could be in a little bit of trouble here.
He certainly could. He's got 0.2 of a buffer, though, at the moment, and has been the main pace setter here in qualifying. Qualifying doesn't give you the race victory overall, but crucially, it gives you the best possible chance of finding that result. And we'll be seeing drivers trying to work in maybe a couple of cycles. You've got maybe 3 laps to get your tires up to temperatures, as we did just see here, just a bit more time coming into play.
Yeah, and then Moric just blew the Casio triangle there on entry, so that's going to hurt his time at a 143.1 that lap. It was only better than his personal best in just one sector, so that was not going to be a better time for him as Domingo goes up to P5. Paul Ilbrink coming to the end of one of his laps.
Certainly is. He'll cross the line, and that one is also not representative. There's been an off-track at some point on the circuit. For those who are new to iRacing and are with us for the first time here on ESBN, the Esports Broadcasting Network, the key here to off-track incident points is if you dip yourself too far into the grass or the gravel or the dirt, you get yourself a little incident point here, which is part of the iRacing regulation system that they have implemented in all racing. If you pick up one of those, your qualifying lap is immediately invalidated and it will not count. So Paul Ilbrink here on the back foot, over half of the qualifying session gone as Danny Hoekstra moves up into 4th position on 42.8. Not necessarily what he wants to be, back of the field in 14th here and trying to work a way through the field, because he'll know that he'll have a lot of contention to get through early on as they keep changing here in around 4th position. 42.7 now from Mark Ponick, and that's good enough then for him to be on the outside of the second row. Yeah,
and especially for a guy like Ilbrink, standing starts here, so this is, you don't want to be in the back just in case somebody spins the tires off the spins the tires off the start, spins the wheels off the start. So I have no doubt that he's going to get a good solid lap in here. He's on a decent one right now, about to come into 130R, but not where you want to be in the back of the field.
Absolutely not. The back of the field is the last place I think any driver wants to be hoping for here in terms of the racing. But Manuel Domingo jumps to second. He gets on the front row, and he's only 400ths back on a 42.215. So a really good second half of the lap has certainly paid dividends here in terms of his times. But Ilbrink has just jumped to the top of the timing stands. He caught it at the same time as I did. 141.9. First time we've seen that barrier break.
Yeah, and we've seen these two Radicals drivers, even in the two races we did last year at Monza and Spa, and the races we've done here, those guys have been really quick, not just in the qualifying session, but they've both been really consistent when it comes to racing conditions. So even though they may be a couple tenths off, in Domingo's case, about 2.5 tenths off, he'll be right up there with Ilbrink during the race.
Absolutely, and here's another thing that's really key. The top 5 at the moment in qualifying are split by just 0.4 of a second right now, down to I.M. Keeman there in what is 5th position. And the number 75 driver will be certainly hoping that he can find just a little bit more there, down to the final 5 minutes. And what's crucial at the end of this qualifying here, Frank, is the fact that you're going to see these drivers, they are allowed to finish the lap time they start at the end of this session. So once 15 minutes expires, you are allowed to complete the lap that you've got. I call it mastermind rules. You started, so now you finish.
Yep, and just like Formula One, it creates a lot of excitement at the end of these sessions to see who's still out there, who's not, who's going to get the last lap in. Could steal a couple of positions after the bell's already rung.
And that is going to be crucial to see here, some of those times coming through and looking to improve. Dave Guild has found improvement. 42.7 from him moves up now into 6th position, and that will be good enough then for the moment, that 3rd row, but it's still very close as well after the top 5 for those 6th, 7th, 8th and down, because you've got Guild, Ponick and Hoekstra all split by 1/10 of a second right now, and you've got likes of Matt Quinn, who's definitely no slouch in the number 22 machine, in 9th position, and will feel pretty hard done by at the moment, 1.1 seconds off the pace and in the second half of the field.
Yeah, and Quinn is setting personal bests in several sectors here, so he might jump up a little bit, and he does, up to P7. So a very good lap from Quinn, pulls it right into the pits, so he might be trying to come in, get those tires, and try to time it right to where he is one of, if not the last driver after the session ends.
Exactly. It's all about timing at this point. So drivers will be looking at this, thinking about, okay, do I have the freshest amount of rubber? Can I get the tyres up to temperature on my outlap? And everyone's just going to be going through a little phase here of trying to work out things. Don't expect many times to improve. Javier Torres, though, finds some improvement. He goes up to 6th place on a 42.5, which bridges that gap right down here in terms of this 14-car field between the top 5 and the rest of the pack here. And Torres was a driver who was definitely knocking on the door in terms of the practice times early on.
Yeah, he certainly was. He was up at the top, shows up a couple of tenths quicker then his teammate Quinn. As we see, I believe this is Ponick going through Casio right now, coming to end his lap, setting a couple of sector bests. However, Manuel Domingo, we're going to switch to him right now, is on an absolute flyer here. Personal bests all throughout the lap. This one certainly could rival Ilbrink's time.
Certainly could. He's got to find 3/10 to his teammate here. Nice and narrow line coming down the hill. So tough to put the power on here. It's a 42 flat, so he's down by 800ths, but 800ths only. Second place. It's now all Radicals online, front row, which is exactly what they'll be hoping for here in terms of these times. We are down now to the final 2 minutes and just a little bit of spare change to add on top of that at this stage. And the likes of Alexander Davidson, I Am Keeman, Lubomir Moric, they're going to have to be searching for just a tiny little bit more time if it is to get them exactly what they want. But you also can't forget those drivers maybe down a little bit further in this field. The likes of Nathan Brumby, Atish Debising as well. Those sorts of drivers will be certainly hoping that they can just get some consistency and hope that there's some troubles for drivers early on here at Suzuka.
Yep, just saw Mark Bruning put his lap in. Alexander Davidson goes up to P3 in, I believe that's the Tulip Racing UK number 55.
You would be correct with that one, and he's just a whole thousandth of a second, just a sheet of paper behind Manuel Domingo, and he's got himself just one more chance then on his lap. Anyone who is not out there on track right now will not be getting one more flying lap in. Lubomir Moric started this session on pole position. He's now on the outside of the second row. Not anymore. Outside front row, 142.011. He's also now 400s, but he can't go any better, and he will not go any quicker than second position can the number 66 at this stage. Mark Ponick coming to the line, does a 42.5 and jumps up into 6th place, and really now starts to put a little bit of things into perspective here, Frank.
Yep, Manuel Domingo also coming across the line here. He will...
No.
Yeah, nope, not better than his last time. Paul Ilbrink coming through. I Am Keeman on track right now. Danny Hoekstra setting a couple of personal best sectors. So these guys are really starting to push it as we get to the end of the final 25 seconds of this qualifying session.
Watch the line to see who's going to be the last person over. Ilbrink's going to be over with about 15 seconds remaining on the clock, and he goes even quicker.
Wow.
141.7. He puts broad daylight between himself and everybody else as he gets there by a quarter of a second. Matt Quinn, he's going to be the last one over the line with about 2 seconds to spare. There's a 42.8, so he needs to find more. So Danny Hoekstra will be the first one over the line to finish his time then, and he does improve to a 42.6. That jumps him up into 8th place, the outside of the 4th row. Nathan Brumby is going to be next, currently in 12th position. He's got a long ways to get to Marcellus Bruning. He's got to find what is 0.8 of a second to improve on 12th place at the moment here in qualifying, going through the very tricky triangle. It's not Pocono, but it is Suzuka as we go over towards the checkered flag and the line. It is an improvement. It's a 43.9, but he doesn't find position improvement. He found half a second, but that was not enough. Mark Ponick will be next then to try and get his dash over the start-finish line. And has he got enough? No, he'll dive down into the pits and he will not find what he needs. Dave Guild then we turn to here. 9th position right now, 42.7. He's only a second off the pace here of Paul Ilbrink. Crosses the line to 43.4. That was nowhere near good enough. Ilbrink has himself only Matt Quinn to worry about. I think his pole position is all but secure. It's just him and one more out there on a lap. Domingo's lap is finished and complete. He's getting more reps in. So it's only Ilbrink and Quinn who can find any more improvements. But what a statement of intent by Paul Ilbrink. He knows what he needed to do today. We said it earlier on here in the broadcast. He needed to find a good qualifying time, and he may just go quicker here as he drives to the line. Has he got anything more to offer? Oh, he does. 41.695. You bet he does. He said, oh, I've got the gauntlet, and like Michael Schumacher, he said, I'll even push the boundary out a little bit further. Matt Quinn then will be the last driver over the line. Has he got the improvement that he needs? 42.9. No, he doesn't, but what a lap from Paul Ilbrink.
Yeah, that was certainly lightning, and we saw a little bit of a slide through the spoon curve for Matt Quinn, unfortunately. So that's what's going to put him down and out for this session. As we get set to start, as we get set to grid up here, I'm looking really looking forward to this race here.
Absolutely, I am as well. Paul Ilbrink then will take the pole position. 141.695 will have Lubomir Moric alongside him in the Positive Sim Racing 66, with Manuel Domingo starting from third and Alexander Davidson from fourth position. I am Keeman, is in fifth place with Mark Ponick in sixth. Javier Torres and Danny Herkstra make row four. Dave Guild starts this one from ninth with Matt Quinn in 10th position. Then following that, Marcellus Bruning, Nathan Brumby, Leonardo Fabian, and Atish Debising make up the 14 drivers that are getting themselves ready for action. They have themselves gridding time at this stage. It's 34 laps. They've got an hour and 5 minutes if things do go that long, but it's now going to be all about that driving process. And Frank, that run to turn one, turn two always seems to have some air of side-by-side to it.
It certainly does, and it's going to be these guys are going to do it right again. They've not had a major first corner incident all season long, and we've seen many, as I had mentioned earlier, many first corner incidents here at Suzuka, legendary ones. Here's to hoping that we're not going to see another one.
We almost even saw one in sim racing in the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series where Martin Kroenke and Mitchell de Jong very nearly came together on the run into turn number one, to the point where drivers got a little bit frustrated with each other as they fought out for their championships respectively. But sim racing, you get a million races like these, but sometimes races get special. They have 2 minutes to grid themselves up, or they start from that place known as pit lane as your champion or your reigning champion and pole sitter grids up then onto the front row. Those with the odd numbered drivers or the odd numbered positions on the grid, they have the clean side of the circuit. They get the rubbered inside, whereas those who maybe are on the inside don't, and they will have to start on the marbles and the dirt, and they may be in a little bit of trouble. Everybody get themselves ready though. It's 34 laps worth of racing action here from Suzuka. The green flag drops and we get ourselves underway. It's a pretty decent start by those at the front. The best of those was Ponick there from the third row, but here they go in towards 1 and 2 for the very first time. Domingo, no chance to make things happen. Keeman on the outside trying to fight this one for fourth place as he tries to fend with Davidson, but he doesn't get what he wants. Domingo thinking of the inside then as they go through the S's section. It's nice and clean from Paul Ilbrink, and he got exactly what he wanted, a big getaway.
Yeah, he certainly did. A nice clean one off the start. Matt Quinn, I think, has had an issue a little bit further back. Yeah, there he is at the back of the field. He's got a little bit of a bent front wing on that left front corner. But right now it is all Ilbrink who has completely Sebastian Vettel'd the field here. 1.3 seconds up before we even get halfway through the lap.
Yeah, and the issue with Matt Quinn we saw was a little bit of a tap with Javier Torres, so that was a little bit of a coming together there, but Paul Ilbrink has checked out in the opening stages exactly what he needed to. Here's some side-by-side. That's Danny Herkstra, I do believe, and Mark Ponick there, and that is Herkstra making a great start here. He's already up 2 places as he's gone on through, and now we'll look at the top 5 in front and we'll try and chase that one down, but Danny Herkstra up into 6th place has made a really good progress here on the start, but they have to be careful in the early stages because of the cold track.
Yeah, and these cold tires as well. It does not make up for a good combination. There are a lot of fast sweeping corners here, especially in that first sector, putting a lot of strain on those tires on this cold track. So there's a lot of things that these guys are really going to have to focus on as Guild goes for a move on Ponick going into Casio, and I believe that might have been Torres, blows the Casio triangle, as yep, there he is coming back on circuit now.
He takes the moto layout then to get himself back on track. It does avoid the slowdown penalty administered by iRacing, so he does drop down behind Leonardo Fabian, and that is now into 12th position. So quite a few changes then on the opening lap. The top 5 have remained undeterred at this moment in time as they follow in a train succession here up through the S's section and look to try and attack here and try and find their moves. And these Formula Renault 3.5s, the power to weight ratios that these vehicles have are absolutely staggering.
Yeah, these things absolutely fly. Not as quick as the Formula One cars, but they certainly have a lot of F1 comparable agility in them, as I Am Keeman starting to put a little bit of a move on Alexander Davidson, actually starting to fall back from him a little bit. We saw Keeman at Watkins Glen have an absolutely fantastic race, nearly flawless race at Watkins Glen about a month ago. So Keeman looking to get right back on that train. here at Suzuka.
Absolutely, and it's all about putting together a good run of results. It's very easy for these sorts of results just to run into a little bit of a lull when you're a little bit out of position, you're gearing yourself up, slightly missed apex through the second half of Spoon. I don't know many drivers who can get that Spoon section correctly. I know I certainly can't when I jump in the sim.
Yeah, no, this is, and I said it just before pre-race, this is not my favorite track to run. It does not fit my style. This is a very specific style racetrack that these guys need to match the style to track. Unfortunately for me, this is not my style. For me, it's a very, very difficult circuit, and for a lot of other people, it is as well.
Lubomir Moric then under pressure in second position. Manuel Domingo closing in with the toe, but unable to get close enough here into 1 and 2. And Moric is left in a very tough situation. Has to be careful about Manuel Domingo, who is going to be probably snapping at the heels of Lubomir Moric, almost like a Yorkshire Terrier would at this stage. He's just got to be aggressive and continue to put Moric in positions where he doesn't want to be to allow Paul Ilbrink the chance to escape. 2 laps gone. He's already 1.7 seconds down the road.
Yeah, and it's only increasing. He's gained about 0.2 of a second in that first sector alone. And Domingo trying as best he can to get pressure on Moric on the back end of that number 66. But Moric looks to be incredibly quick here. Unfortunately for him, Ilbrink's a lot quicker than he is.
And that typically is the case with a couple of drivers who feel like they've got pace. There's always a bigger fish, they all say, and that's always going to be the case here in terms of this run at the moment. But we do have these drivers trying to gain places back. Mark Ponick has actually just lost another position. That's to Dave Guild, and that was between 7th and 8th places. That one, the very good move, actually, from one Mr. Dave Guild. He had to go around the outside of 1 and 2 to pick that one up and get it done.
Yeah, we're watching it right now as gets nicely around the outside. And that turn 2, when they come out of turn 2 and get into the S's, that track narrows up quite a bit.
And that's a move as well now for second position as Manuel Domingo gets it done out of 130R and moves by around the outside of the triangle to get past Moric, who is struggling in the early stages. This is going to bring Alexander Davidson into the fight, and here comes the next attempt. Draft into draft, though, always a little bit helpful, but no, not going to find the move. So Lubomir Moric now back down into third. It's a Radicals 1-2 here as we start lap 4.
And we've seen that all season long. The only reason why they didn't finish 1-2 at Watkins Glen is because of Domingo's mistakes on pit exit, not once but twice. So Domingo has certainly had the speed all season long. Winning last week at Barcelona, he's been able to stay up at the front, almost won at Monza, if it wasn't for that last lap pass. But as I mentioned during qualifying, these guys have the race pace. They are incredibly consistent, and we will be seeing this all race long.
Matt Quinn has come down into the pits. He had damage to the front wing, and that was from the early stages. I think he tried to stay out as long as he could on that strategy to keep himself in line so that if he did need to come down in, make a stop and make a full stop at that, he'll be able to get back out and racing again. But it does feel a little bit early. Davidson now will definitely want to try and get into the mix here, find himself an opportunity to make some overtakes then in the opening few laps. But they do have 30 laps to go when they next cross the line. So they've got a lot of time available on the horizon. But that pit window, what we call a traditional stop in and around the area really here, Frank, would you say around lap 20 might be the time where most drivers are thinking about that stop?
I would say so, yes. That's right around the time we've been seeing them, is just ever so slightly past halfway, and we know these guys can make it and still setting incredibly quick times when they get close to that pit window. So these guys are certainly going to be looking around that between lap 18 and 22 is kind of the pit window that I'm looking at.
It's going to get awkward here for second as Domingo just about defends the move in towards turn number 1. Moric is gaining here on Domingo underneath that draft, but he just doesn't seem to have any drive coming out of the exits of these corners, and that's maybe what's holding him back a little bit here comparatively to Manuel Domingo. He also has to deal first and foremost with that dirty air effect, that turbulence that comes into play when you're being buffeted around through these corners and you can't follow cleanly behind the air that the car in front's making.
Yeah, and there's a couple reasons why he could be struggling so much on corner exit. It could just be lack of trust in the car, that if he puts the power down too hard, the back end's going to snap around, or because he is so close to those guys, that it could be the front end washing away. But whatever it needs, whatever is going on, he needs to find a way to overcome it to try to get that position away from Moritz, because it does look as though Moritz is holding him up a little bit. And through the last lap times, Davidson ran a 1:43.5, Moritz a 1:43.8.
That tells you all you need to know about these times and how they are trying to get in. There has been an overtake. Nathan Brumby has lost the place to Dave Guild out on track. So Guild doing a pretty good job of things right now. But at the moment, it's those top 6 at this stage who have got themselves in a pretty nice pack. But second to 5th, that's really where it's all at right now. And you've got a few bits of strategy that you can play here if you're in the pack. And there's a spin. That goes Davidson around then in the Tulip racing car. Very easy to do. Just gets caught up trying to put the power down early to attack, and then the corner spits him out on exit. And this vehicle is so tough once it goes into a slide and goes a little bit sideways. We've also lost Satish Debising from the back of the pack. He's out of the race. But Davidson right now having a big spin, dropping down to 8th.
Yeah, that certainly was, and that looked as though it just, looking back at the replay again, might have, he was never really settled coming out of the left-hander, and once he tried to put the power down and rotate through the final corner, it just snapped around on him. So really unfortunate, and that's going to put Davidson on the back foot here for the rest of this race.
Now got to play a recovery drive, and there have been a couple of drivers in this field who have had to go and resort to that here in this race. What it has done, though, because of the avoiding action that needed to be taken by IM Keyman, it means now that he's dropped the back of the draft train to Lubomir Moritz, 1.3 seconds, the gap it was over the line. So that really does give a little bit of respite here to Moritz, who was looking backwards for the first 6 laps of this race. He can now turn his attention moving forward maybe to Manuel Domingo and finding some elements of consistency.
Yeah, you're seeing 1.2 seconds between Keyman and Moritz. Also just behind them, 1.4 seconds. Behind them is Danny Hoekstra, who's having a very good run after getting such a great start, up 3 positions from his initial starting position. So Hoekstra having a very good run trying to get into this top battle. First time we've seen him up in the top 5 pretty much all season.
Having a really good affair with this circuit, and there are those sorts of drivers who do have this little bit of a love affair with Suzuka and maybe tracks like Motegi and Okayama. There is a little bit of a difference to how Japan really does settle its asphalt compared to a lot of other circuits, mainly due to the fact that they crush things like seashells into the asphalt around this sort of place, and so you get different properties. And that's why you typically say here, Frank, that maybe Japanese tracks are a little bit more greasier than you'd find at other circuits, and that's why they can be so tough to master.
Yeah, and that's also why you've seen so many Japanese drivers like Kamui Kobayashi be able to really work well here and drive incredibly well here and find grip and find pace where other drivers might not be able to. They're so used to running on these tracks and so used to running on these surfaces that they're able to work around it. When you come here, though, it can be very difficult for a first-time driver coming here to try to find that rhythm.
Absolutely. Alexander Davidson has found the back of Marcellus Bruning then. This is a battle between teammates at this stage. This is the 7th position. I doubt that we're going to see too much of a fight being put up here in this one, knowing that Davidson is the quicker driver of the 2. So maybe Marcellus here might just want to give him a draft and give him a tow all the way to 130R and then graciously depart out of the way, going through the very, very difficult left-hander, which is all about bravery and commitment.
Yeah, we're riding on board with Davidson right now. He had a lot tighter of an exit through Spoon. Doesn't look like he's going to be close enough through 130R. Might be able to make a move into Casio, though, as, yeah, he certainly will be, as he takes that move around the outside going into the Casio triangle. Spins, tries an undercut, and unfortunately, Bruning hits the curb and spins out right in front of Davidson, and that causes a big pile up in the Casio triangle.
Don't know if I should say it, but it looked like we were dealing with a little bit of netcode through the accident there. It was a case where Bruning was trying to really get in on it, and it looked like it was a case of maybe as you looked going through, Davidson trying to get nice and narrow, but ran out of road, ran into the back of Bruning, and that's why the two teammates come together. And rule 1 of sim racing is, well, don't hit your teammate. Rule 2 is don't hit your teammate, but you say it louder.
Yeah, even in the blimp cam that we showed a little far away, you can see that, yeah, there was a little bit of net code there between the 55 and the 61. Javier Torres able to get by. Bruning falls down to the 11th position. But, yeah, that's really the first big moment we've seen here all race.
Absolutely, and it's so easy to do around this place. You can feel it sometimes a little bit difficult. Now, look back to 2nd, 3rd, and 4th position. IM Kieman has jumped onto the back of Lubomir Moric, but Moric has jumped onto the back of Manuel Domingo. Just struggle a little bit there through Spoon. Drops maybe a 1/10 of a second through that corner, but will have this long west part of the circuit to try and gather that back up as they head due east through 130R and towards the end of the lap. So maybe this is a case where Moric doesn't have maybe the best early setup, but maybe the tyres are coming back to him a little bit in comparison to Manuel Domingo.
That could certainly be it, and we've seen it a lot from Domingo, where he's from Moric, where he's able to make these runs here late in the session, or late on a tire stint, as they head into turn 1. Nothing too dramatic from these two drivers, from these three drivers, really. But yeah, Moric really does look as though his Formula Renault is coming in.
Absolutely, and the Positive Sim Racing outfit certainly hoping that they can get a good, consistent run out of this here, with Moric in the number 66 right now, making progress up the hill towards the two Degner corners, and looking to try and get going through. But there is, absolutely right, Alexander Davidson. Then he's in the pits right now, as he has actually pulled it over to the side and has effectively, I would say, called that one a day. Can't get anything out of this race, can't get any drive out of the car. That's it, day done, pack the bags, we're going.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate. He had such a good car, was quicker than the drivers in front of him. Unfortunately made that one mistake, and it kind of all unraveled from there.
Certainly does happen, but there are still many laps to go here in this one. When we cross the line, we'll be down to 25 laps remaining here at Suzuka. 5.81 kilometers, 17 turns, and all about amazing action. Paul Ilbrink is your leader. He has led from the drop of the green flag so far. His lead now out over 6 seconds at this moment from his teammate Manuel Domingo. But Domingo knows he's playing a job today, and that is to keep Moric and Kieman pretty much under wrap and key.
Yeah, and this is for the points lead for these guys. Again, only 2 points separating Moric and Ilbrink up at the top of the standings. So with Ilbrink being where he is right now, this is a big points day. And if Domingo can keep Moric behind, it's even bigger for the driver of the 16.
Absolutely, and Lubomir Moric has been staring at the back of that Radicals Online car for a number of laps at this stage, and he's got to be maybe a little bit concerned that he could probably name every sponsor off by heart at this point on that rear wing, the way that he's been watching intently. But this is what you do. This is high-speed racing. They're going over 250 kilometers an hour, heading into 130R around this circuit. You're playing chess at 250 Ks. Effectively, you've got to work out where the weaknesses in your opponents are.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Moric is sitting there doing. He's sitting there watching not just the sponsors, but every single move that Domingo is making, and he's trying to figure out, okay, I'm better than him here. I can probably make a move here. I can work around him here. Here's where I gain. Here's where I lose. So he's learning a lot while sitting behind Domingo right now.
Absolutely, and also you got IM Keyman, who would effectively, if you're talking IndyCar terms, is in the catbird seat here. He's just sitting, he's waiting, and crucially, he is saving a little bit of fuel and a little bit of tyres as well. Not being aggressive, not going after moves. He's probably going to be thinking about, okay, maybe I could gain something here if I potentially undercut both of my rivals at the stop.
Yeah, it certainly can, and we've seen it all season long. The undercut is so powerful. We're still about 8 or 9 laps away from the pit window actually opening, but that is something you're starting to think about here even this early. There is some time to think around this track. If you come in a little bit earlier, there is that that box to overtake mentality to where if I pit earlier, I could get the overtake done with that undercut.
And we have been seeing a few drivers gaining a few places here in this one. It's a little bit more open season for these drivers, maybe a little bit further down in the pack, a little bit more spread out. But Danny Hoekstra up 3 places so far in this race. Nathan Brumby also up 3 places so far in this race. They are both your joined biggest movers and shakers in the field at this stage, and both of whom who have done so, well, in 2 different ways. Brumby has seen a lot of drivers fall by the wayside. You look at someone like Danny Hoekstra, he's gone out there and made moves.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you need to do. You have to try to be quick around these tracks, but you also have to be there to be able to pick up on somebody else's mistakes, and that's how you gain a lot of positions here, especially when you get as spread out as we are right now. You have to be there to capitalize on other drivers' mistakes, and Brumby has done that. Also, as you said, you could just do it on raw pace like Hoekstra has.
Absolutely. Now the charge from these 3, second, third, and fourth, once more to 130R. We're on lap 11 out of 34, and Manuel Domingo, again, just looking to play cover here to Paul Ilbrink. That gap out now to 7.6 seconds at the last time they crossed the line, but Moritz getting a great run there in the second phase, coming out of 130R. But again, you look at him struggle here as he comes through that final corner and attacking through this next right where you need the power down. This is always going to be a tough place to go and get things working. Domingo doesn't cover the inside just yet, but he's going to wait to see whether there is going to be a move from Moritz, who isn't really close enough because it's only a very light lift when you go through turn number 1, which makes overtaking around here difficult when you're behind. Well, nigh on impossible, some would say, but you really need to be side by side into one if you have a chance.
Yeah, and you really need to be aggressive, and you need to be committed to that move. I go back to Kimi Räikkönen, I believe it was 2005, when he was with McLaren, that incredible run that he had, and he made that race-winning pass in turn 1 because he was committed to that line. And when you have the inside line, if you both want to make it through the corner, the guy on the outside has to back out. So that's where Moritz is going to be looking if he were to make a move going into turn 1.
Yes, but this is the key as well. There's also the case of risk versus reward. And maybe here in Lubomir Moritz's case here, Frank, we're looking at a situation where Moritz doesn't have to go out there and make the move on circuit. There is one pit stop in this race. He can mitigate all maybe risk factor, you could say, and do a risk management and say, well, what can you do? Keeman runs a little bit wide there, missing the apex through the second part of Spoon. But if you don't need to go out there and make a move on track, just do it in the pit stop. It's risk-free.
Yeah, exactly, and that's that box to overtake mentality. And right now, Keeman's in the best spot for that because all the guys that he's fighting are in front of him. He could sneak off the back of the line and pit without the risk of somebody going and trying to match him or trying to make a big move to cover him off. So Keeman's in the best spot for that. Moritz, though, that might be a strategy that he's definitely looking to employ to get into that second place.
Absolutely, and this is where we are starting to see these drivers maybe just settling into a rhythm, just ticking laps off and hoping that they get themselves in the best possible place. Just look at the difference, though, in the lap times between second, third, and fourth and your race leader. It was a 43.8 from Manuel Domingo last time by. Paul Ilbrink was a full 7/10 of a second quicker. He doesn't have to race at 7/10 of a second quicker than the drivers behind. He's got almost 10 seconds now of a gap to play with, but Paul Ilbrink does what he does best. You drive at around 100%, and if you drop below 95, maybe even down to 98%, sometimes that's when you start getting the mistakes, when you feel like you're too comfortable.
Yeah, and he's the only driver in race trim to put the car into the 1 minute 42 second bracket. As you saw on screen, his best time is a 1:42.8. The only other driver to get even remotely close to that is not his teammate Domingo, is actually I.M. Keeman, who put in a 1:43.3. That's the closest anyone has been able to get. Oh, yep, there's Keeman sliding through Spoon.
He'll lose out to Hoekstra, and he'll get himself back on track just ahead of Ponick, who will now start to attack here as Keeman's going to be slow and getting up to speed, but it looks like they're even. So easily done by I.M. Keeman. He'd been threatening that mistake for at least 3 laps. He gets on the curb, tries to gather it in the corner, and the back just wants to loop around there with oversteer as he tries to turn in aggressively. Very easy to do. I Am Keeman now drops back into the top 5. Was going to be his race, now isn't.
I was just about to say that. You had mentioned last lap how wide of a line on the exit of Spoon he took, and that's exactly what does him in again here. Gets on that curb at the top of the Spoon curve and puts himself around, and that's unfortunately really going to put him back only one position, but about 8 or 9 seconds as far as time on track.
And now look at Lubomir Moric, because he starts to get a little bit more aggressive there into turn 1, knowing that the shackles had been unleashed from him, not having to worry about Keeman behind. He's only got to focus on Domingo here, and he'll be doing so knowing that he is driving at a very good rate of knots, and the both of them are pulling away at a rate of 0.4 of a second to Danny Hoekstra, who is in 4th place at this moment in time. On the brakes they go into the Dunlop hairpin and looking to attack through 200 right, which is always a very understated moment. If you remember where Daniel Kvyat had his big rollover at the end of qualifying in Formula 1 back in the Red Bull, this is the sort of area where it's so easy to take advantage and really forget that actually you are going flat out through that section, and you can get it wrong if you're getting a little bit dozy.
Yeah, and in Formula 1, it's such a lazy corner, too. You don't really have to put too much effort in to be able to go through that corner flat out. It does lull you into a very... Pardon me?
I've just seen Nathan Brumby have a spin down at the Dunlop hairpin, and it was all on his own. He just gets on the brakes, he goes through the right, and he just grabbed the curb on the inside and looped the back around. Had that very awkward, can I get it back on track? He did, at the cost of a position.
Yep, and we're watching it right now. He's just getting into the Dunlop hairpin, and yep, you're right, just mounts that curb and throws it right up onto the grass. And yep, that is Mark Bruning that's going around and taking that position away, so that drops him just to the very back end of the top 10, Brumby.
Yes, so now he's got to try and find that position all over again. It's so easily lost, but he's got to try and find it once more. Looking at his laps, he was actually being reeled in slowly but surely by Marcellus Bruning, and that is always going to be a little bit concerning for him. The one small mistake, when you look down at the relative, so to speak, and you see that time ticking away, there's always a psychological mindset to that, Frank, and maybe that was just the case here for Nathan, feeling that maybe that gap was starting to creep down a little bit. Maybe was looking at that, maybe looking at, okay, how much fuel do I have left? There's a million different things that drivers will be looking at here as they prepare themselves for pit stops.
Yeah, when you see somebody catching up, you're worrying about so many different things. You're right. How much fuel do I have left? Am I burning off too much? Am I working my tires too hard? Am I entering corners too tough or too light? And you start changing your driving style, and once you do that, that's when you're prone to making mistakes because you're doing something you're not used to doing or you haven't gotten in the rhythm of doing, and unfortunately that leads to a lot of mistakes.
Absolutely. Paul Ilbrink, though, still your race leader here, coming to the end of lap 15 of this event. His lead margin over 10 seconds at the moment, and in the not too distant future, you might be thinking about lapped traffic and Matt Quinn here, who of course did make that stop earlier on. He made that stop on lap 3 of this race, and maybe Paul Ilbrink here is just flexing a little bit here as Moric here is close once more to Manuel Domingo, but once again, just not close enough. He just needs an extra 1/10.5 if he's going to want to make that move, but instead he'll just have to sit, he'll just have to wait, and he'll just have to be patient in the positive sim racing car here as he tries to work out a way to go and get on by the number 9.
Yeah, he's proven to be quicker than Domingo pretty much all the way through this race. He just ran his fastest lap of the race, did Moric, at a 1:43.25 that last lap. So Moric certainly is quicker. And also Domingo ran his fastest lap of the race at a 1:43.5. So 2.5 tenths quicker on their best lap. So Moric certainly going to be really begging for a passing lane soon.
But there's also this one added factor here for Manuel Domingo, and that is he is a former positive sim racing driver. What that means is that he probably knows Lubomir Moric and his driving style more than anybody else in this field.
Yes, certainly. And he's, again, as you mentioned before, as far as Ilbrink in the championship goes, he might be playing rear gunner just a little bit, trying to hold up Moric as much as he can. So this way, if Moric does end up getting around Domingo, then he's got a long way to catch up, and right now they've got nearly 12 seconds to make up.
Well, I doubt that's going to be made up unless Paul Lilbrink somehow finds himself in the elements of Mistakesville sometime soon. Half distance will be score complete at the end of this lap. And once more, Manuel Domingo holds himself with a good line, but it's a little bit wider there from Lubomir Moric, who tries to get out of the dirty air, and now he'll only just get the draft about halfway down the straight as he will get himself right there, but he just needs another 100 meters on that straight if he's going to get close enough to maybe sniff the inside. Once more, it's a case of the same old story as they go on through the pack. Very spread out here throughout the rest of the field here, and that's pretty much been testament to the fact that these drivers have been quite happy just sitting in their own worlds and just driving along their own races, just thinking about trying to finish off this one overall more rather than getting themselves into any real form of trouble.
Yeah, that, and also trying to pick off those single car mistakes, as we just saw a couple of laps ago. Bruning able to capitalize on Brumby's mistake. So a lot of guys playing different strategies here is how they want to race it. And I am Keeman, going back to him, we saw him spin out about on lap, I believe that was, lap, might have been 10. Keeman, 13. Keeman really not gaining on Danny Hoekstra either. He still has that 5-second gap behind the driver of the 91 in Hoekstra.
Well, there's a number of factors that could come down to that, and one of those is the way that tyres overheat when you get yourself into a spin. It's very easy to hyperheat up or effectively blister the back tyres, so to speak, as you try and get yourself back onto the power and go out and attack again. It does take a couple laps to get the tyres maybe back down into temperature range to go out there and attack and maybe have another little run of things. I am Keeman, I think, also would have taken that maybe corner as a little bit of a bite and a warning shot maybe, and said, well, maybe let's dial this one back a little bit here and try and work things out in terms of the realities that we've got to be going and racing for. Remember as well, there is a very, very strict incident point limit in this race. It's 10 points of incident before you get yourself a drive-through penalty, and then it's 20 for disqualification, which if you drive any official series, you get 17 before you get yourself into drive-through range. So to have only 10, that's putting a lot of people on a very, very short rope.
Yeah, and certainly, and that's not just 10 incidents with other cars. That's off tracks are included in that, car control as well. So there are very little things that could certainly mess up and get your incident points up. So this way, if you do accidentally get into a bit of a spat with another driver, that really tests your limit. But as you can see on screen right now, only one lap in the last 5. That would have been lap 14. Hoekstra has been quite a bit quicker. He's pulled out a second on Keeman in just these last 2 laps alone.
Yeah, he's done incredibly well. I do have to note that we have had our first effective pitter in this race, and it's Dave Guild, who's pitted in from 7th position on the road. He now comes out behind Leonardo Fabian, now in 11th place. So Dave Guild has decided that he wants to be the one who comes down in, who makes his stop, who gets himself out and away again, and moves himself forward. So we'll see now, maybe the domino effect start to come in here as drivers maybe start thinking about pits, and on cue, in comes Lubomir Moric.
Yep, Moric now taking, as I had mentioned, that box to overtake mentality, gets in before Domingo first. He's going to be able to really push on those new tires and try to get around Domingo that way. And we saw on screen while you were going through with Guild, he had actually blew the Casio triangle at the right before he came into pit and decided, you know what, it's about time anyway.
Absolutely. It's lap 19, or the end of 18. He comes down in. He got nicely in on the brakes. I don't think he made too much of a mistake of it. He just ran ever so slightly wide through the second part, carrying maybe a couple Ks too much speed. He's out and away again. And crucially, he's just ahead of Marcellus Bruning and co. So that's going to be a pretty good stop for him to come back out in 7th place. And he'll have work to do now to try and chase down the likes of Manuel Domingo, who very, very aggressively has to now go and get into the pits as soon as possible. Such is the way that the undercut works here. Fresh tyres against non-fresh tyres. You're definitely going to see a difference, especially since the opening laps of this one. But here's something really key about the way Domingo's been racing. 43.6 from Manuel Domingo. His fastest lap was actually 2 laps ago.
Yeah, so Domingo right now is he's gotten pressure off of him, but still he's got to be able to try to cover off Lubomir Maric. There's just under 40 seconds, a little bit just over 30 seconds, pardon me, that separate the two of them. So is Domingo going to come in this time? He will, to try to cover off Maric. So Maric really needs to put in a very good outlap here. He's coming out of the spoon curve, headed towards 130R. This could be very close coming into one.
Hoekstra also follows in, as does Ponick into the pits then at the end of lap 19. Javier Torres is the next driver on track, and then it is Maric who will be the driver that we keep a very, very big focus on. It was very aggressive on the line from Manuel Domingo, who definitely wanted to push and be aggressive. He'll come off the jacks and he'll go away now. That tells you all you need to know. Maric is only just on the front stretch here, but it's a slow pit lane, so you've got to get up to speed quickly here, Manuel. Here comes Maric, thinking he's got a chance, but no dice. It doesn't work out. The undercut didn't pay off. They're exactly the same, but remember, he's on fresh tires right now. If anything, Maric has to attack now while the tires are cold.
Yeah, while Domingo's tires are cold, Maric has had an extra lap to try to heat those tires up, get some pressure in them, get some temperature in them. Domingo has actually gotten out and extended his lead just a little bit, so that right there comes down to pit entry for Maric. Maybe a little bit softer on pit entry than Domingo was.
Well, now you've got to be aggressive and find that overtake here and work out where is the right place to attack. So Maric here right up underneath in the battle for second and third net on the road here. Will be certainly hoping for that opportunity. They've got 15 laps to sort this one out between them. Ilbrink stays out for another lap as your race leader here in this one. Keeman currently in second, and Torres is currently holding the third place position right now on the road. So those drivers will certainly be scrapping it out. But again, it's all about feel, and it looks like this is going to be a good run here for Lubomir Maric here, as it was a little bit of over-rotation from Manuel Domingo. Here comes the chance. Which way do you go? Do you go left or do you go right? He's going to have to take the road less traveled. Domingo took the middle of the road away, and it's side-by-side through 130R all the way to the Casio Triangle. Maric unable to really attack that one on the brakes, but Domingo's just run it in a little bit too hot, and here comes Maric down the inside, and he will just about pick up P2, but it's not over and done with just yet. They'll fight all the way to one.
Yeah, you really have to be committed if you're going to go to the outside of 130R, as we're going to see the move. And yep, as I had mentioned before, if you're on the outside going into one, you really have to give that position up because you're not going to make it through. And that's exactly what Maric forced him to do. But to be committed on the outside of 130R like that puts you in a really good place, the Casio Triangle, forced Domingo into a mistake, got them side by side, and Maric on the inside line, the preferred line going into Casio, and turn one, gets the move done.
We've also got another move here out on track. This is Matt Quinn trying to get past Marcellus Bruning. This one a little bit further down the order. There are drivers in the pits coming out right now. So here comes Quinn on the recovery. He'll look to the inside, trying to pick this one off. And, well, he'll continue to fight this one with Marcellus Bruning. And very nearly, tyres tapping there as they go through turn one. That got very awkward very quickly, but no harm, no foul. They continue on. But Matt Quinn finds a way through. He gets past Bruning.
Yep, and that's exactly what I'm talking about as we see Ilbrink in pit lane right now. So this might possibly give I.M. Keeman the lead as Ilbrink gets into his box. But that's exactly what I was talking about with Quinn and Bruning. If you're on the inside going into one, you really have to let that car on. You have to let the car on the inside go if you're on the outside. Otherwise, that happens because that lane gets very, very narrow really quick.
He's already gone here as Paul Ilbrink. That's just how quick his stop was. Domingo's definitely not giving this one up in the scrap for second place on the road. Keeman is in on the lane. It was a late call to come in onto the lane. He got a little bit of grass on his entry, so he's got to be a little bit cautious about that. That is the engine blowing of Davidson as it's side by side for second. Here comes Domingo. He'll take the outside lane once again.
Oh, there they go.
Netcode contact between the two, and Domingo is ceremoniously dumped to the outside. Hoekstra will find a way through onto the podium, and Domingo ends up in trouble.
And that's not the first time. If you think back to Monza, going through the second chicane, those two got into it, both Maric and Domingo. Unfortunately for Domingo, that was on the last lap. And now these two coming together again in turn one. Domingo had the outside lane. Maric might have wanted to give up a little bit of ground there to make sure they waded through safely. But Maric has shown he's had the speed. I'm sure he didn't want to let that go.
No, he definitely didn't. He had himself more than a car on the inside. He had himself the front nose and even the front wheel on that inside as well. So definitely no reason to give that one up. Those are two very experienced drivers in iRacing as well. They have very, very high iRatings. They are definitely some of the best racers you find out there. And of course, they definitely did not want that to be the way it goes. Now Domingo's got a job to do, and he's got to try and chase down Danny Hoekstra, and hopefully there's no damage really to that right rear suspension in any way, shape or form. That would be causing him a lot of trouble if there was.
Yeah, we just saw the two replays, one from onboard Lubomir Maric and then one from Domingo, and you could clearly tell from the one on Maric that was completely and totally net code between those two. Not an ounce of contact was made between the two, but unfortunately for Domingo, that sent him off. Fortunately for him, not into the gravel trap.
Yeah, and that's crucial as well. He had a very clean run to get back out onto the circuit. Of course, if this was early 90s Prost Senna, you wouldn't have had that little bit of luxury of some runoff to go and work with. But Domingo here has work to do. He's got to find 2.4 seconds here on Danny Hoekstra. And this also brings in IM Keyman back into the fight here as he comes out of the pits. He's only 2.4 behind Domingo. And if he can find that pace that he found early on in his stint, before he managed to find his spin, he might have himself a really good opportunity to claw away back through and maybe even get himself a podium finish.
Yeah, going back to Prost and Senna, I don't think both of them had all four wheels to work themselves out of that gravel trap. But yeah, as you can see, between these three here, still about 2.5 seconds between Domingo and Keyman, but Hoekstra is really losing ground to Domingo, who's, I'm sure, driving with the red mist right now.
Absolutely. Of course, you've got every reason to be angry and worried. And of course, when you have an incident like that, if you don't have maybe pit crews or chiefs or people in the team around you telling you exactly what's happened, you can only say, oh, I've had an accident and there was something on the inside. You can only review that a little bit later on once you get yourself over the checkered flag and you don't end up, say, Formula E star like Sebastian Buemi, who pretty much after his race at, I believe it was the London race at Battersea Park, let everybody know, or every driver in the paddock know how he felt.
Yeah, and that's, again, it was 100% net code between the two. And I think what's going to be, as I mentioned, what's going to be eating at Domingo a little bit more, this is the second time that those two have had an incident. So not knowing what happened, I'm sure thinking, unless he's listening to the broadcast, without knowing exactly, I'm sure he is absolutely fuming inside of that cockpit right now. And I'm sure after the race, though, he still might not be happy, but at least he'll know it wasn't intentional from Maric.
Just looking at those last couple of laps, well, to tell he's unhappy, that's an understatement right now. He's just put a 1:43.5 down on the board, which was a full 0.8 of a second quicker than Danny Hoekstra that last time by. At this current rate, he'll be caught within 2 laps, will Hoekstra, and that's going to be a little bit concerning for the Tulip Racing car, which could be on course for a podium this season. He's up 5 places in this race right now and knows that he's just got to hold on for what is 10 laps at the line. What's crucial, though, look at the lead gap here. It's 20 seconds right now from Paul Ilbrink, and most of that he has masterminded very well, and his stop was actually really, really good as well.
Yeah, it was. He did not spend long at all in the pits, and to think he came in the last one of the group. His lap last time was just half a second quicker than Maric. As it stands right now, he's 21.2 seconds quicker than Maric, so he is really just putting times down here. And going back to what you said about the speed that Manuel Domingo's carrying, he as well was about a half a second quicker than Lubomir Maric was on that last lap.
Worth noting that Matt Quinn has come in for his second stop. This one is the scheduled stop that he's had to make. He's now down at the back of this pack at the moment in 12th position with a long road to get to Leonardo Fabian. I doubt he'll get there in time, but really a race which for Matt Quinn it was pretty much over before he started, ran into Javier Torres in turn 2, and from there, it all just ran into disasters.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him, he had a solid showing at Watkins Glen, again in Barcelona, had a decent run. Here again, he's had a decent run since he's come out of the pits. Unfortunately, has not really been in contention, as we're going to see a battle for second place. We saw in the long shot down the front straightaway, there's only 4 seconds, now 3.5 seconds between Maric and Hoekstra. Maric just put a time in the 144s, so could he possibly have turned the engine down to try to save a little bit of fuel, save a little tires? And if that's the case, he's going to have to turn it up here soon, as Domingo is just on a flyer right now.
And not only is Danny Hoekstra trying to respond here, he responded with a 43.8 that last time by, but they are both quicker than Lubomir Maric at this moment in time, who's on a 44 flat. It's his last representative lap, and you have to remember, Danny Hoekstra is only 3.5 seconds here behind this. And Manuel Domingo, yes, he may have sights on the podium. That will be the easy one. I think he'll have sights on second place as well if he can get back to it as quickly as he possibly can. He knows what he needs to do. He needs to be out there, he needs to be aggressive, and he needs to find places fast, because this is what he's racing against. He's not racing against third, he's not racing against second, he's racing against time.
Yeah, and with 9 laps to go, that's really it. It is the time to be able to try to gain those 4 seconds back. Now, again, we're crossing the line here, so we'll see what the times are. Maric puts in a 43.9. Domingo puts in a 43.6. Hoekstra actually puts in his personal best lap of the race at a 43.55. So those guys still, even behind Maric, putting in times quicker by 3 4/10 of a second. They're going to be with them. Also, I Am Keeman putting in times that are comparable with third and fourth as well at a 43.64.
This is a really strong response by Danny Hoekstra, who is effectively being put into the pressure cooker at this stage. Knows he's not got long to go in terms of holding on to this one, but maybe, just maybe, he can see the likes of Lubomir Maric struggling a little bit here on his own pace, on his own. Maric has been really good when he has been following behind other drivers. He's been looking a threat like that, but he hasn't been looking a real threat otherwise, and this is where we're starting to see here maybe a couple of differences between these drivers. Hoekstra was a little bit wider compared to Domingo, who got nice and narrow through the Dunlop corner, but Domingo knows that there is an old Murray Walker saying, catching is one thing, passing is another. It's very easy to close up to 1.2 seconds in this sort of series, but to get by, that's the real masterclass that everyone looks to try and find.
Yeah, and how the tables have turned. Domingo was the one that was blocking off, and now he's the one that's stuck behind the driver in front of him. As you're right, Hoekstra, having his best race of the year, has really responded in this situation, trying his best to get that podium. Lubomir Maric, going back to him though, we saw him do this last week at Barcelona. Wasn't really around anybody, turned the car down, started saving the tires, started saving the fuel for the fight that he needed to have towards the end of the race, and he was able to be successful in that fight. Now, a lot closer, the lap times this time, a 43.9 for Maric, a 43.8 for Domingo. As a matter of fact, Keeman and Domingo ran the same exact lap at a 43.85. Hoekstra the slowest on that lap right now, on that last lap with a 44.2.
Exactly. So Hoekstra now finds himself within 1 second and will definitely have that psychological barrier being put into play. Manuel Domingo knows that he's got to be pretty much assassin-like in the way he's going to get through this. He's got to be swift and he's got to be effective in the way that he gets by Danny Hoekstra. He knows he doesn't have time to waste here by just sitting back and watching and waiting. He's got to go out there and be aggressive and really go out there and show that he's got the move available underneath him that gives him exactly what he wants out there on track. There's no other alternatives in terms of the way this race is going for him. He's got nothing really to lose behind. He's got 3-4 seconds. So if he goes out and becomes aggressive, he might be the sort of driver who may get third and may be charged to go out and chase a second.
Yeah, and you can see these last couple of laps here, it's been all Domingo. Domingo has been a lot quicker than Hoekstra, but as you said, he's got to try to get around Hoekstra, and that's not the easiest thing. there are a couple of places you can pass here. The problem is you've got to be close enough in order to make that move, and Domingo has not been, as Ilbrink sets the fastest lap of the race at a 1:42.74.
Well, it was a great response by Hoekstra. He took 3/10 out of Lubomir Moric, but look at Domingo, 43.1, closing right up. Late lunge for the inside, but he runs out of road, and Hoekstra gets well out of the way. Well, why wouldn't you? Very nearly lost the front nose there, did Manuel Domingo through turn 1. So through turn 2, he takes advantage of that miscommunication, that door having to be left open, and he says, thank you, I'm taking that. My next rival is the one who I had contact with earlier, Lubomir Moric, and now this becomes a real key chase ground here for Domingo. He closed 7/10 on that last time by, and he's got to find something comparable to give himself a fighting chance here of attacking Lubomir Moric.
I think Hoekstra got spooked off the line with how late a move Domingo made. I think that spooked Hoekstra off the line, and by the time he got down to where he could make that second apex, he just was never going to make it, and that left Domingo the hole wide open to be able to make the pass. And now, as you mentioned, the chase is on. 3.6 seconds to make up, just about 6.5, 6 laps to make it up. Can Domingo close down on Moric, who right now is going to have to really start turning up the wick? A 1:43.1, fastest lap of the race for Domingo, his personal fastest lap. Moric in the 1:43.8.
Well, the thing for Lubomir Moric is that he is playing damage limitation to Paul Ilbrink. There was no chance in a month of Sundays that Paul Ilbrink was ever going to be caught today, unless there is an incident, and he does have traffic in front of him, does Paul Ilbrink. We will not hope that he finds that. But Moric, 44 flat exactly. Domingo puts a 43.6 down. It's another 0.4 of a second. It brings that gap down once again. 3.2 seconds, but again, 0.4 of a second with 6 laps to go doesn't get the job done. This has got to be at least half a second, and that's just to get within half a second on the final lap. He's got to be looking at closing 6/10, 7/10. Domingo's got to be finding low 43s, if not 42s, if he wants to go out there and get second place.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the times compared to what Moric was doing earlier in the race, that leads me to believe he's deploying that same strategy he did last week, where he is kind of just, he's wound the motor down. He's not pushing the car nearly as hard, so he has a little bit more to fight with, as I think Domingo has actually had an off. Yeah, Domingo's had an off. He's down to P5.
Just like that, and it's through the big curve that leads up to the Degners, and he goes through the left-hander, and he's just lost the back end trying to put the power down completely. The back steps up, it's torque oversteer, and that's 2 places very, very easily gone. Domingo now down into what is P5. Hoekstra is back on the podium, and I.M. Keenan moves up into 4th place. Just like that, Domingo's mistakes come fully back into view.
Yeah, and that is horrendous for Domingo. Again, fighting to try to get up to Moric. As you mentioned, he has to make up about a half a second, a little bit more than a half a second a lap, and that just completely pushing too hard through a very difficult corner that's got a couple of unsightly bumps in the middle of it, tossed him around, and that is going to really put Domingo in a sour mood.
And that will effectively put the end to that then in terms of this lap. Moric finds himself now with 5 seconds there or thereabouts to Danny Hoekstra. So he knows that he just has to bring this one on home, as will Paul Ilbrink, who is leading this race outright. But Manuel Domingo, that one will really hurt. He's 3 seconds clear of Mark Ponick, who is in 6th place. But we don't have the benefit, so to speak, of seeing, well, who's got what, who's got how many incidents here. But with Manuel Domingo having that incident earlier on with Moric and then having himself in that sense of trouble with that spin, surely he's going to be skirting very, very close to the edge of 10 incident points and a drive-through penalty.
I think if I'm remembering his incidents right, I think he has 7 now, because that would have been the car contact with Moric that made him lose the 2nd position. Then I would have to assume he got both an off-track and a car control on that last one, so he could be 1 more car contact away from having to serve a pass-through penalty.
Well, the good news for him is that he's got a little bit of space between any of those drivers, and he won't really have to worry about that just as much. A little bit of love, though, to those drivers a little bit further back in the field. Nathan Brumby and Leonardo Fabian, they're split by 3.5 seconds right now, heading into the final 5 laps of this race. And you would have to say for Leonardo, he's had a really, really quiet run. Yes, he's down at the back of the pack in 11th place here. He's gained 2 places, so has Brumby. But these two haven't been a million miles away from each other all race long.
No, they have kept rather close to each other. Only 3.5 seconds separate those two, and this could come down to the amount of practice time that is allotted to these guys, because real life happens, and we've seen it a lot here on ESPN recently. Could just be the lack of practice time or just a lack of comfort in these cars so far for these guys, but they've put on a fantastic race, and I'm sure with only 4 laps to go, there might be a chance here that these two come together for a clash at the bottom of the top 10, pardon me.
Well, certainly they'll be hoping so. Well, Brumby certainly won't be hoping so, I'd say, at this stage, with 3.5 seconds to play with in the final stages of this one. But let's take our attention over towards what's next here, Frank, in the next round of the championship, because if Paul Ilbrink does convert here, and he's got 25 seconds to play with to try and convert in the final 3 laps and a little bit in this race, you'd have to say that this is a statement of intent that we haven't seen this season. He is on course to be the first 2-time winner so far this year.
Yeah, and he had 128 points when he won the championship last year. So Ilbrink has shown his muscle, has shown his mettle to be able to really dominate here again like he did last year in this race. He has been absolutely flawless all day long, and for the second time this year, we go to the United States on January 9th for the second American Grand Prix at Road America, not at COTA, but at Road America. So again, another track where it's long straightaways, tight braking zones, very hard braking zones. I would have to think Ilbrink might be the favorite again there next week, 2 weeks from now.
Absolutely. He looks like he is definitely walking forward towards that at this stage, but it's been a case of maybe the rivals behind making a few mistakes here and there. We saw what happened with Domingo and Moritz coming together. We've seen the likes of Ian Keeman spin. We saw, of course, Alexander Davidson spin all the way back 21 laps ago from this point in time. It's been a case where Ilbrink's really been the only driver, along with Danny Hoekstra, who hasn't really made a mistake in this race.
Yeah, and I mean, for Moritz, you really can't even say Moritz has made a mistake. Now, he had the contact with Domingo earlier on, but really, netcode, you can't really fault that as a mistake. So the 3 guys that we've seen have clean races here today. Those are the guys that are on the podium positions, and that's, unfortunately, in road racing, that's how it works. It's not always the fastest car that wins.
It never always is, but sometimes you do get there over the line.
Today,
and find exactly what you get there. We get there, and I think Paul Ilbrink will certainly be getting there. He has 2 laps to go to figure out this race and effectively drive through, and he's going quicker and quicker still. He's just done a 1:42.3, which is a new fastest lap then in this race. He is going pretty much full Sebastian Vettel. He did on lap 1 when he looked to try and get himself away and build a gap. Now he's going for fastest lap upon fastest lap.
Yeah, and he's almost a second clear of anybody else. Manuel Domingo, his teammate, put in the second fastest lap of the race just last lap at a 1:43.1. So 0.8 of a second clear on fastest lap, just stamping his authority on what has been a dominant Japanese Grand Prix.
Absolutely, and this is the sort of drive that he'll be certainly relishing and trying to get home over the line. We are just ticking up towards that hour mark in this race, and how everyone has been charging forward. The gaps have been a little bit open, but we have seen a few drivers really have some good, quiet drives through this one. Someone that we haven't really talked about, Mark Ponick in 6th place here. Frank, he has been there, started 6th, finishing in 6th right now, but has just gone about his business, hasn't really needed to do anything out of the ordinary here today to pick up a very, very consistent result.
Yep, taking my style, just run your own race, and whatever happens, happens. And that's exactly what's happened with Ponick. Going to have a very good points day coming out in the 6th position. He's got no one to worry about behind him. 19 seconds is David Guild behind him. Domingo's running away from him in front. So he's on an island by himself right now, which I'm sure is making him feel incredibly comfortable.
The last lap of the race starts then for Paul Ilbrink in the Radicals Online number 16 machine. He is someone who has been around sim racing for a very, very long time, has seen all shades of developments come through, and has pretty much lived to tell the tale so many times before. For so long, he has been a professional driver in iRacing circles with a Pro World Championship license, and the opportunity to strike while the iron is hot has presented itself here today for him. He has been in the World Championship Grand Prix series pretty much since inception, all the way back when it was an IndyCar series and Gregor Hutu was winning his 5 World Championships. But Paul Ilbrink here just has to manage a little bit of lap traffic here on the final lap. It's Leonardo Fabian who will have to try and find a way through as he gets onto the brakes and will decide to work this one out. In fact, Fabian here might just need to get out of the way. Blue flags are normally advisory and not mandatory when it comes to this sort of iRacing series, but he moves over to the left-hand side of the circuit, and Ilbrink will comfortably find a way through. This was a race today of intent. This was a race of signaling what you need. There was a lot of people wondering what was the pace going to be like in qualifying. There was a lot of, well, I've got this and I've got that. And all of a sudden, late on in the session, Ilbrink put a 41.7 and a 41.6 down on the board. In the race, he just pulled away, straight away. Nobody was ever going to see him. He ran off like a whippet, but now into the Casio Triangle. For the final time here in this race, it is going to be pure dominance from Paul Ilbrink, and some would say a vintage drive like fine wine. Paul Ilbrink takes the Japanese Grand Prix.
And you're right, just a dominant performance, a statement race. I'm still here. I am going to be a factor in this championship, as he is going to take the championship lead, as Moritz just now coming through Casio to finish out his race. He will stay ahead of Danny Hoekstra, who just put in his fastest lap of the race. As Hoekstra, Moritz crosses the line, your podium set. Ilbrink, Moritz, Hoekstra, your top 3 today.
And just coming over to the line right now, Manuel Domingo in 5th place as I Am Keenan finishes in 4th. What a race that he could have had for Manuel Domingo. He did almost everything right, except he got caught on the wrong side of Lady Luck, some would say here in this one, as the final few drivers coming through. It's looking close between Dave Guild and Javier Torres. That gap comes down to about 2.5 seconds, but I think that Dave Guild just has enough to make it to the line, and will do to pick up 7th place ahead of that. So we will, just as the final couple of drivers, will wait for Bruning and Brumby to make the line, get confirmation of results. Paul Ilbrink will take the victory then in a time of 58 minutes and 57 seconds. He wins by 29 seconds over Lubomir Moritz, with Danny Hoekstra there in 3rd position, just 3.5 seconds back. I Am Keenan with a spin finishes in 4th position, and the spin for Manuel Domingo as well means that he gets 5th. Mark Ponick finishes in 6th, with Dave Guild 7th and Javier Torres in 8th place. Marcellus Bruning and Nathan Brumby make out the top 10. 2 drivers a lap down are Leonardo Fabian and Matt Quinn, with Alexander Davidson and Atish Debising the only retirements then here in this race. And, well, in terms of the way that we've been going about things, Frank, it's been a wonderful race we've got so far. I am a little bit short on time, though, so I'm going to be stepping aside for this moment and leaving you with post-race interviews.
Yes, you will. Jake, fantastic race. Enjoyed this to no end. What a fun day. Have a good one on your next race.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that will leave me with the post-race interviews here. We will be trying to get we'll be getting these guys in here. Ilbrink, Moritz, and Hoekstra are going to we're going to be running in here with them, as we'll try to get these guys in here right now.
Channel switched.
As I believe Paul Ilbrink, your race winner, sir, an absolutely dominant race here today. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was a good race.
It's, to say the absolute least, it was a very good race. You got out to a very big lead, about a 2-second lead just on the first lap alone. How dominant was your car today?
I think I was like fortunate that like I set up the car a little bit to be really good on running alone, not having to fight anyone, and having that gap after the first lap. It really worked in my advantage. I think like I didn't have to worry about anything else. I just try to put in consistent laps, which went all right for the most part. Towards the end of the first stint, I struggled a little bit on the tires, made a couple small mistakes, and towards the end, the last couple of laps, I made a couple like bigger mistakes, but that was just a little bit lack of focus. I think was getting a bit more sloppy, and yeah, but didn't really matter in the end. But yeah, good race.
And going into Road America in 2 weeks' time on the 9th of January, what are your thoughts going into that race? A lot of long straightaways, a lot of heavy braking zones, somewhat like here, not as technically demanding as here, though. What's your thoughts on going back to America for the second time this year?
My thoughts are that it's probably 3 weeks instead of two.
Yeah, 3. Yep, you're right.
I don't know. Like this, like the Suzuka track is like so amazing with like has such a good flow to it, which is like such a blast to drive just like on your own. And that's not really something that Road America has, but it's a nice technical track. It's like easy to make a mistake there as well, and that can cost you a lot. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the challenge, and hopefully we have good competition there.
All right, anybody you want to thank before we let you go and celebrate?
I just want to thank my team mate Manuel, who I guess struggled a little bit because I saw him dropping back a bit after the pit stop and towards the end as well. And all my other teammates at Red Console Line and our partners and sponsors, Cranfield Simulation, Armor Center, Truck Racer, Joe Real Timing, Turn Racing, MLATF Podcast, Six Sideways, and Pixel Dust.
All right,
And you guys for doing a nice broadcast every time. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciated. As your race winner, second race win of the season for for Paul Ilbrink, pardon me, and new points leader. Paul, congratulations.
Thanks.
Channel switched.
All right, so that was your race winner, Paul Ilbrink. We now move
Channel
to
switched.
speak to our second place finisher here tonight, Lubomir Moric. And first question I need to ask you, we saw on the replay that it was net code. What happened there going into turn one with you and Domingo?
Hello, good evening, everyone. So it's hard for me to say.
Not sure.
Okay.
We might be having a little bit of an audio problem here.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you now. Faintly, but I got you.
Okay, so let's hope it's still working. So basically, it was difficult for me to say right now what happened there. From my perspective, I just that's was trigger of his car probably, but I'm not sure for that because it was just glimpse of the second. We were fighting side by side, so yeah, I'm really not sure. You probably saw it like that.
Your second place finish. You fall unfortunately behind Ilbrink in the point standings. Going into Road America next week, what are your thoughts about going to the big track in Wisconsin?
Yeah, Road America. I expect quite a bit of setups in here. It will be a mix of high downforce and mid downforce setups. It's always very difficult for us drivers. However, it will be quite a show for all the spectators because there will be plenty of overtaking, plenty of draft, and really difficult for us, as I said, but I believe you will enjoy that.
Right. Anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, indeed, the Positive Sim Racing team, my colleagues, Tim, Craig, Manu, and other sponsors, Joel, Real Timing, Set1 Dashboard, Modo, and Studio 3T. Of course, congratulations to Paul for the victory. Outstanding pace. It was basically a completely different league. Very well done. Congratulations to Danny Hoekstra for the third place. Thanks for you guys for the broadcasting, and to everyone, I wish happy holidays.
All right, we wish you a happy holidays as well. Lubomir March, your second place finisher here tonight, bud. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Channel switched.
All right, so that is Lubomir Maric, and we're going to try to get Danny Hoekstra in here now. As
User was moved to your channel.
we have him here now, your third place finisher, Danny Hoekstra. And Danny, what a race today! You had a biggest mover of the race, I believe, 5 positions up from where you started. What was the key to the race for you tonight?
Well, actually, I was quite surprised as well. I've been practicing with my teammates, David, Alex, and Mark, but I just like practice for about 10 to 15, maybe even 20 laps, but that's about it. Since I just, took a little bit of a break. And yeah, for some reason, I just figured, well, let's just not try to push it too much, and we'll see what happens, and we'll see how it goes. And well, I took advantage of the mistakes of others, really.
Yeah, you certainly did. Got you right up to a podium position. What was your thoughts battling pretty much that entire second stint with Manuel Domingo? You had him behind you, made a late move going into turn 1, and then unfortunately a couple laps later for him, made a mistake. What was going through your mind as you're battling with Domingo on that second stint?
Yeah, well, the funny thing was that I was actually focusing on the 4th position because he was in front of me like a couple seconds ahead, and I thought, well, let's just try to keep Sander Kieman behind me because he was really fast in other official races as well, I heard. So I tried to kind of manage the pace and be as consistent as possible, and I think I did. And then I suddenly saw him making a mistake and coming back behind me on track. So I knew I had a couple seconds, but I also knew that if he really wanted to, that he should be faster since I, like I said, didn't practice that much. Yeah, so he closed in on me, and I knew that if I would give it all, I could probably defend a little bit, maybe for a lap or two, but eventually it would cost us time, and that would give Kieman the opportunity to close back in. So I decided to let him go, but I thought that he would make the move kind of like before the start of turn 1, but he was a bit too far behind, I think, or he just didn't want to take the risk, so I let him go a little bit. And before I even knew, he spun in front of me, which of course is unfortunate for him, but that gave me a very surprising podium.
Going into 3 weeks' time at the second American Grand Prix at Road America, what are your thoughts going into what would be the 5th round of the season and second trip to the States?
Yeah, well, I think it's good we have a little bit of a holiday off since our last season we had some issues with people being on holidays in summer and all that. So we decided to avoid any kind of people not being able to race. So that's why we have the break. But yeah, Road America is amazing. I really like the track. I think it's one of the best tracks on the entire sim and maybe of America. So yeah, let's see what happens there.
Anybody you want to thank before we let you go and celebrate your podium finish?
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for doing the broadcast again. Thanks, my dad, for spotting me again. And yeah, we managed to finish in a very good position. Thanks to my teammates, Mark, of course, my own teammate, and Tulip Racing UK with David and Alex. We scored some points today, which is a good thing. And yeah, thanks to all who've been watching and who participated today.
All right, your third place finisher, Danny Hoekstra. Best performance of the season, bud. Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
All right, so there is
your
top
channel.
3 finishers here tonight, and we'll go to the finishing results here for this evening's race, or this afternoon's race, as it will be Paul Ilbrink taking the race win. Lubomir Maric and Danny Hoekstra finishing in the podium positions. You've just heard from all 3 of them. I am Kieman finishing in the 4th position. Manuel Domingo, after his several incidents, comes home tonight in the 5th position. Mark Ponick coming home in 6th. Dave Guild 7th. Javier Torres in the 8th position. Marcellus Bruning in the 9th position. Nathan Brumby rounds out the top 10. Leonardo Maz in the 11th position. Matt Quinn comes home in 12th. Both of those guys coming home 1 lap down and Alexander Davidson and Adish Debizing, the two drivers that did not finish tonight's event. So we thank you very much for making us a part of your day. For Jake Sparry, my name is Frank Marchese. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight, and we will see you in 3 weeks' time at the Road America Circuit. Coming up tomorrow on ESPN, however, is the Chris Cup Sim Racing Series from Texas Motor Speedway. That race will be at 6:50 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to like us on Facebook and like the stream on Facebook as well. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and a subscribe on YouTube as well. We thank you very much for joining us here tonight, and we will see you tomorrow for the Chris Cup Sim Racing Series race at Texas